Right at a year ago now, I made a video walking you around and taking you for a drive at my, at the time, newly leased Audi electric car. And it's now been a year. I just turned that back in because it was a single pay 1 year, 7,500 mile lease, and I got another Audi electric car. And it was a very interesting video, and the comments were extra interesting because most of them revolved around the premise of giving a caveman some kind of a computer, because that was really the sentiment of my reaction to this electrification experience. And the car in question at the time was a 2024 Audi RS e-tron GT, which is a long name for a vehicle that is effectively a Taycan Turbo S with an Audi badge on it. And I think if you say the name 3 times fast under a full moon, it'll turn your dog into a newt. But this one's much easier. It is just an e-tron Q8, kind of an SUV version. And I have to say, after a year of it, I am not quite that old man screaming at the clouds when it comes to the idea of us owning, or at least leasing, an electric vehicle. And so I'm going to take you for a ride in the new one, tell you about what it was like, because we put almost 9,300 miles on the RS e-tron GT. And I think we're going to continue, I guess, to be an electric car family. But this is a good opportunity to talk about today's video sponsor, Premier Financial Services. Now, this is a lease. Now, I'm not a new car guy, I'm not an electric car guy, and I'm not a new car lease guy, because in most cases, that is just paying to rent a vehicle. But because of the circumstances behind the current market for luxury electric cars, especially these Audis, the lease is actually cheaper than I would spend on a few tanks of gas, the tires and brake wear on my wife's GL63. And so it's not really an apples to apples ownership cost comparison, but that is because it is a closed-ended lease. Now, with Premier Financial Services, they have what they call their simple lease, and we've talked a lot about that on the VinWiki channel because it's a very, very different strategy in a way to have a much lower payment and a lease structure which has some tax advantages for small business owners while still retaining the flexibility that goes generally with a normal finance structure. And so their simple lease is the most powerful tool in the world of exotic car financing. It doesn't really work for electric cars, but this, even though it looks brand new, it's in fact a pre-owned car. And so Audi Financial Services is really embracing that idea of nearly new leases as a way to get these depreciating electric cars off their balance sheet in a little bit more of a strategic timeline. So let's take our new e-tron Q8, or I guess our slightly used e-tron Q8, for a drive, and I'll let you know what it feels like to be a repeat electric car buyer. Recently, I appeared on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast with Graham Stephan, and one of the questions that they asked me is if there were any cars that I would never buy. And, with Car Trek premises, I could buy just about anything at any point and feel justified in it for whatever adventure or shenanigans we were about to get into. And so there's a lot of things that I, don't expect to buy that I might end up buying. But the answer that I gave was boring cars, like normal cars that people buy that are just uninteresting and uninspiring. And one of the comments that I read was so dead on, and it really opened up this blind spot that I don't see in my own life. But it was like, this is a comment from someone who doesn't need to get anywhere. I thought about it, I said, this guy's right. Like, since I don't have a daily commute, since we shoot from the garage, and since most of the places that I go, I can plan in advance, I can use a supercar for pretty much all of my driving needs that don't involve hauling kids around. And I've got the Cayenne for that. And so I don't feel the need to have a commuter car that is reliable, because I can drive anything and then break down, Uber back, and drive something else and just deal with it. And that is a really awesome perk of my current lifestyle. And I love that, but I don't think about cars the way people that commute to a job do. And that's just something I'm having to understand about myself. Now, when my wife first got in the Q8 as opposed to the GT, her first response was, I nearly rear-ended somebody because the brakes don't work very well, and it doesn't steer nearly as well. And she's right. It is floppy, and it doesn't accelerate as fast, and it doesn't brake as well. Now, that trade-off involves a lot more room for the kids, and so they are enjoying this one a lot more. But it doesn't look as cool, and I get that that's a bit of a difference. But, the GT, even though it was very fast, considerably faster than any supercar that I've got, including the Bugatti in most contexts, really, it's just uninspired when you go so fast or accelerate so briskly in it. I mean, even though it's quicker, it accelerates with all the flamboyance of an aggressive Quaker. I mean, it's just not something that makes you so excited every time you get to unleash what the car is capable of.
Whoa!
Man, they weigh a lot. But I mean, look, there's 60 miles an hour. That was quick, faster than most supercars. But if I was doing this in a manual transmission, naturally aspirated V12 Lamborghini, the noises wouldn't even be available for subtitles. It would just have some little script that said satisfaction noises, because it would be confused as to what type of media you were enjoying this fine afternoon. And I get that, because this is designed to just get you somewhere as efficiently and comfortably and easily as possible, not my normal demand for a car. Now, that being said, we put over 9,000 miles as a family on the RS e-tron GT, which I didn't know it was going to be 1,500 miles or 15,000. Only 7,500 were included, but it's only a quarter or so after that. So, I mean, I get it that, you know, we did use the car way more than I thought. And in the context of a 1 to 3 mile journey, which most of our drives are, because we got a lot of local restaurants and, you know, taking the kids to school and stuff like that, going to baseball practice, it does make some sense. Now, I don't enjoy those drives as much as I do when I get in one of my supercars, but when you start a high compression giant engine supercar, you don't want to turn it off after a couple of miles. You want to get it up to operating temperature, which usually means I've got to run it around the block, drive it 4 or 5 miles before I go to wherever I was planning to get to, which involves a longer time and all that. But I love that. That's a good thing about my lifestyle, and I am very, very pleased to be able to approach driving in that way. But there is something blissful about having this car that you don't have to do anything special to. If you just start it, move it 3 feet, turn it off, it doesn't mind. It's just like my golf cart. And so, you know, just for that kind of stuff, I get it. And we never even had to put the 220 charger in, because my wife only drives like 20 or 30 miles a day on a big day. And so the just wall outlet one would replenish it every night. You're supposed to only charge it to 80% to take care of the battery, but it's a lease. And so it was always up to 100%, which was lovely. And we turned it right back in. And since we kept it under 10,000 miles, it remained eligible for these nearly new leases that Audi Financial Services is using to prop the values of the pre-owned cars up, so they don't have to take all the loss immediately. It can kind of be almost like one of these visionary subscription models that allows the losses to come over a long, long time and some interest to be accumulated and things like that. But it's not interest. And like, I mean, in this case, because it doesn't have the front cameras and all the extra options and ventilated seats, it was so far below next year's residual value from Audi Financial Services that it absorbed the taxes and the interest. And I'm not allowed to say how much that costs, but it's amazing. Worth every single penny, maybe even more. And so I don't know if this means like we're now an electric car family. That would feel weird to say and totally inconsistent with everything I've ever put out there on the internet. But we have enjoyed having it. I'm glad to have another one. I'm glad it has a little bit more space. I don't know. I'm sure in a year or so, Audi will have some other you know, artificially undepreciated electric cars that they need us to have, and who knows? I'll go get one. Thanks, Nick.